Alpha Andromedae 2's first buildings are starting to resemble a passable production line, but before we begin preparations for our first trip off-planet and into the solar system, we should make sense of what we've built so far. Hello Legion, this is Hadrian. Thank you for being here. Let's play some more Dyson Sphere Program in our Alpha Andromedae series. So, as you'll recall, when we first landed, we set up some mines over here. And we also have one over there, but we'll look at that in a moment. We have a mine on these nodes, collecting stone, a mine on those nodes, collecting coal, and a mine on those nodes, collecting iron. And a number of wind turbines powering things so far. These lines, as well as the line coming from our copper mine up here, are bringing those 4 resources to 4 independent storages set up right here. We haven't yet done anything with our stone, but we will very momentarily. And from those storages, the resources that are being fed into them then feed into the actual production apparatus that we have begun to build on the surface of Alpha Andromedae 2. Now again, the reason that I have these storages here, there's 2 reasons. The first is it provides a visual line over here. This is where everything plugs in. No matter what source I'm eventually drawing these 4 resources from, whether it's coming from other deposits on this planet or coming from imports off-planet, this is the point at which I will plug these resources into this factory as long as these 4 resources are needed on this planet, which they might not be always. So it's a visual distinction between where things plug in and where production actually starts. And we will do our best to actually maintain that and have a sense of separation between these 2 sides, because there's a method to that madness. There's a purpose behind it. And then the second reason that you have these set up is so that there's a buffer in the line. Sometimes things freeze up. Imagine for just a moment that something down here stops working, and so all of this buffer here, for example, this storage completely fills up with iron ingots. Iron ingots stop feeding because this storage is full. We could always expand the storage, but let's put that aside for a moment. And then these iron ingot smelters stop producing because there's no room on the lines because the line is backed up. They stop pulling in iron ore because they're not producing, and then this storage backs all the way up. Having more storage there in order for it to back up when that happens, allows things to continue moving. If you don't build in a certain amount of buffer to your supply lines, and it's up to you how much you want to build a buffer, then what generally occurs, unfortunately, is if something stops, everything stops immediately. But buffers allow different sections of your operation to continue operating when certain segments shut down. Like, for example, right now, this segment is shut down. Why? Because we are not producing, well, we are producing electric motors, but we don't have these actually feeding into the research process. So let me go ahead and grab these out of these assemblers. And notice that it's now being fed into this research project, which will improve our movement speed by 1 meter per second. So Icarus is about to get a little faster. Now, we do have an interesting project coming up in that the steel required for this inventory capacity upgrade, it's the first of, well, there are more than one. There's several types of resources that cannot be fabricated directly, but this is the first one you unlock. So I will not be able to replicate steel inside Icarus. It's just too complex. Icarus is not robust enough, as awesome as he is, to be able to actually make steel inside him. So what we need to do is set up a production line that will produce steel from our iron ingots. Remember that iron ingots steel takes 3 iron ingots to produce 1 steel. There's the recipe right there on the screen. So let's go ahead and pursue that, since we're going to need steel for our next research. Right now we have 1 output for steel. And I'm kind of tempted just to have steel. Yeah, you know what? I think what makes the most sense in this case is let's go ahead and produce 4 more smelters. We'll eventually have many more than 4. But I'm going to have steel smelters here on this side of things. So we'll maybe fill up this space with about half iron smelters for now, iron ingot smelters, and then half steel smelters. It's the exact same building that we have set up here. It's just going to be a different recipe. It's going to pull from this line. Now, one thing to think about as I do that is that by pulling from this line, I will reduce the amount of input going into this apparatus. So I'm actually reducing the main feed for virtually everything that I'm building here. The iron ingots are feeding these circuit boards, they're feeding these gears, and they're feeding the production of these electric motors. Need to grab some more of those when I can. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, but I'm going to roll with it because, frankly, it's worth it. So I think what I'd like to do here, because this, I haven't usually found myself in this situation, but it looks like this might work. Let's do, to start out, we're just going to have 2 steel smelters. I'm going to be a little conservative. Let's build some additional sorters. We have unlocked the second sorters as well, so that's one major objective for this episode, is to go ahead and upgrade all of our sorters. Remember, the new sorters are twice as fast as our old ones. So they pull things off the line twice as fast. Basically, the speed in which they, the metric that they're measured by is the speed that they move back and forth, the number of trips they make in a certain amount of time. So now we are, now notice how quickly, see that? Look at the speed of a Mark 1 sorter. Look at the speed of a Mark 2 sorter, just yanking stuff off that line. So we're going to go ahead and copy paste that recipe. And as you can see, we're already seeing this line empty out, because these steel smelters are just going to town collecting as much iron ingots as they possibly can. Now, it looks like they're capping at a certain amount, which is good. I don't want it to just continually suck iron ingots in, but it is definitely slowing down the flow of these resources coming in. So then what we kind of have to do, I want to pause and just reflect on what that means visually for a moment. What we have to do is think in terms of, okay, we need more iron ingots coming in so that this remains a steady flow. Because right now, especially once I have an output for the steel setup and a storage where it's all going, what's going to happen is, again, everything that's depending on the iron ingots that I just said a moment ago is going to kind of run dry, or at least that's the risk, and we don't want that to happen. So while I was talking there, I built some sorters, and I'm going to use the upgrade tool, which is the U key here. There's several different ways to upgrade, but we're just going to replace these sorters. So the first thing we've done is these particular smelters that are producing the iron ingots are now outputting twice as fast. But we also want them to take in resources twice as fast. And we're going to do the same with the rings there. And I'm also going to do the same with the 4 sorters that I've got set up. I may eventually remove the double sorters, but notice what just happened. Now we have this very satisfying increase in speed, where everything is coming in much faster than it was before, and now this line, look at this, is starting to back up again. Now, I would imagine if I upgrade this... Oh wait, did I already use all of them? No, I didn't. There we go. So let's go ahead, since we've gotten started, it makes sense to continue doing that. Let's go ahead and replace all of them. It looks like we'll need some additional motors, and that's okay, because we need to grab them anyway. So that's going to give me some extra. Very good. And again, you can automate the production of those eventually, which we will very shortly, but for now, I would just like to do it manually and start upgrading some of these. What I generally do, and let me set a good example here, is I will start from the end of the production line. So the farthest thing we have out, there we go. We are now 1 meter per second faster, and you literally saw the speed increase there. So this is going to be the satisfactory kind of aspect of watching this journey develop as we play, and especially as I kind of get my legs back, not only on YouTube in general. For those of you watching my channel for the first time, I have been gone quite a while, and this is one of my first series back, and I wanted to play something that I love. So I'm still shaking a lot of layers of hardened rust off in terms of commentary and in terms of like organizing my thoughts and conveying detail, and this is a very detailed game, but I love this game. So once I get my legs back a little bit, and once I've also, aside from the rust, once I've just figured out a fun and I think, for lack of a better word, followable way to commentate on Dyson Sphere Program that I'm comfortable with and that flows naturally, I think that this is, as I said in episode 1, going to be a very zen-like and enjoyable experience to follow along with, because it's just a massive exercise in organization, productivity, logistics, and the beauty of space and space travel and stellar phenomena. You just have no idea. You're in for such a treat. So, if you've never played Dyson Sphere Program, if you played Dyson Sphere Program, you understand exactly why I'm playing this. So, as I said, I'm going backwards down the line. And that's it for that. Now, the handy thing is, every single one of those that I upgrade, I am being given the original back, which is really quite nice. So, that allows me to not have to build new Mark I sorters. All right, so now everything that I have set up here is twice as fast. Let's check our power situation, see how that's doing. Very good. So now we can view the planet's veins distribution from here. That's quite nice. So if I were to zoom out, look what we have now. On account of some of the research that I've finished, I can now see where all of the resources are on Alpha Andromedae 2. Check that out. And yes, you can see some crude oil seeps, some of them quite nice. 3+ on the home planet is always a bit of a gold mine. Crude oil is a different type of resource in terms of the way it's consumed than the other resources in the game. You can see that all of these deposits across the planet, some larger than others, have fixed amount of resources available in them. And we can see exactly how much. It's not an approximation. It is literally that much. But the crude oils, they have a seep speed, a rate at which the crude oil emerges from the ground and is extracted. And as you run down that crude oil, that number will slowly drop to 0.0000. But for now, we have some crude oil seeps that are completely untapped. Almost done here. We have some crude oil seeps that are completely untapped, and therefore their numbers are quite good. All right, so now that's everything. Notice something interesting has happened here. Our current mining speed is not fast enough to keep this line completely full anymore. This is the maximum rate at which our current mining speed can output these resources. So lots of little kind of pieces go into how these logistics work. And you can, rather than be intimidated by it or be overwhelmed by the amount of detail, I would say a fun and also useful way to think about all of those different ways that the supply chain kind of can break down or can be built up is, again, look at it in terms of the ladder. Think about it in terms of you have so many different opportunities, so many different ways to solve problems. It's, as I mentioned a few episodes ago, there's no one way to build bases in Dyson Sphere Program. It's very, very complex, but in an incredibly enjoyable and approachable way. Surprisingly approachable, even. Okay, one thing I would like to do, speaking of buffers, I've been preaching about buffers for a few episodes now. I'm going to go ahead and grab some additional, I'm going to get some additional storages going. We're going to have 3 total, because one resource, or one pair of resources that I really like to have built up with a buffer are these resources here. And I generally like to have that buffer near the research buildings. Now, I'm not in love with the placement on these, so I think what I may do here, yeah, I'm going to set these storages up so that they run past. Here we go. All right, so give those a moment to build. And what we're going to do is have some buffers for these as well, so that once these sorters are done pulling cubes and done doing everything they need to do here, these resources will continue to run past the research buildings and they'll feed into these buffers. So that's not quite the same type of buffer. It's actually an overflow rather than a buffer. But we'll take it, because I would like to have a place where I can just pull large stacks of these resources. Exhibit A, I need 115 of these chips. I'm going to go ahead and just pull directly off the line by holding my mouse button down here on this. I've got the final segment in this particular, you can see it highlighted orange. I've got the final segment in this particular line selected, and that's allowing me to just yank stuff off of the line as quickly as possible. I'm currently not producing electromagnetic matrices, and the reason for that is the tower is full of them at present. The research that I'm doing at the moment doesn't require matrices. We're still at that beginning part of the tech tree. So we already have all this steel that we need, and I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Perfect. And that's going to be all of these circuits that we need. So now we just need to give the research a moment to complete. Once all of those numbers reach 60, you'll see them all start going down together. Oh, just kidding. No, you won't. I think the coal might be in my... You know what? Let me click that off. There we go. Those were sitting there from a previous project, so that stuff has just been re-entered to my inventory. When you have this checkbox turned on, the purpose of that is to allow the research to pull stuff from your inventory automatically when research needs that particular item. You'll recall that I think in the first episode, I went to grab a bunch of coal, and then as soon as I did that and said, let me get some coal in my inventory, you look at my inventory and there was no coal in my inventory. Why? Because you look over here, the research had already grabbed it. But when you uncheck that box, it requires basically, it relies only on the research buildings such as this one here, the Matrix Lab, to conduct research. So, and you can get away with that later in the game, by the way. All right, and now they're working again. So we have an extra line of inventory capacity, and you can see that right here. We now have 5 lines, 5 rows of 10 columns. So lots of space, and we will be able to continue improving that more and more. So now that our research is going smoothly again, let's see what else we can focus on. It might be a good idea to go ahead and set up the automated production of our conveyor belts and our sorters. So this requires gears, and it requires iron ingots, and then the sorters require iron ingots and circuit boards. +1 construction drone done. So we're really starting to move through some of our research progress here. You'll notice when I'm building new things, there will be an additional drone helping out now that I've done that. All right, so we've also unlocked the oil refinery, which is a pretty big deal. And I think I'm going to go ahead and look for... God, the clouds look so good. This team can just... They can do no wrong. Like, Youthcat has just done a fantastic job with Dyson Sphere Program. I absolutely adore this game. All right, so we've got some options. I've got one over near my original resource inputs, which I kind of like the idea of having the crude production over here so that it can feed in the same direction as the rest of my resources. And that's a pretty good seep. It's 3.2924. Whereas we have one up here above the base that's 3.2513. And no others unless I'm overlooking it. No, no others close by. There's a lot of coal near our... Oh, wow, that's a lot of coal. Okay, so I'll have to clear that because there's probably still going to be, like, production going on in that direction. Our power situation is still pretty damn good. So, let's fly on over to that coal deposit, shall we? I'm still okay on fuel. I'll have to keep an eye on that, though, because I'm down to my last stack of energized graphite. Energetic graphite. Energized graphite. You can turn this light off, by the way. So if you want to have a true sense of darkness at night, especially if you're stargazing, which you definitely can in this game. Lots of Hadrian moments to come, I promise you. We've got a lot of detail in the beginning here as we get underway, but lots and lots of Hadrian moments to come. All right, so actually I jumped the gun a little bit because I need to get some additional resources. So I think what I'll do is grab some more chips because I'm going to need them for this blueprint research. There we go. So we've really accomplished a lot in terms of upgrading Icarus this particular episode. And then we'll be able to keep momentum going with upgrading towards leaving the planet. And maybe paying a visit to Alpha Andromedae. Let's take another look real quick. Again, we have Alpha Andromedae 3, which is an ice-filled Gelosol planet, and Alpha Andromedae 4, which is an ashen Gelosol planet. Okay. So I think one thing that would be a good idea to do now, also let me go ahead and land. One thing that would be a good idea to do, in addition to grabbing some additional energetic graphite, we haven't yet done anything with our stone. Our stone is just sitting here waiting to be added to the list of productive things. So let me finish my first thought from a moment ago, and then we'll do that. So I mentioned that I was going to automate the production of... Nice. So now we can do more with blueprints. I'm not using blueprints at the moment, but blueprints do come in quite handy. So I'm going to have some gears, and we're going to grab some iron ingots. And with that, let's go ahead and just queue up 10 assemblers. Now again, if I want conveyor belts to be automated, I need gears and I need iron ingots. So that's actually kind of perfect because they'll go along this same line here. So because we still have some water in the way and I don't yet have the ability to build over the water, haven't quite researched that yet. When you can see environment modification as an actual button there, we will be able to do that. But before I wrap this episode, I would like to have some of these things which take so much effort for me to build multiples of. I want to show you how satisfying it is to have them automated. Okay, and then what do these sorters require? Sorters require... Oh, I am dreaming. That's beautiful. Okay, so this will actually be a little bit easier. So for the... This is not the most organized approach. I don't normally like to build this close to my research buildings because I like to leave room. There's going to be a lot of expansion around this. But for now, again, we may revise this later. But the reason I'm so excited about what just happened is that I can pull off of this line. It's not going to be perfect because it's going to slow down things over here a little bit. But I want Mark 1 sorters. To be automated as well. Now, interestingly, we seem to have an issue with our metal. And it might just be that we need to speed up the output, which is not going to be a permanent solution right now because you can see the input is not fast enough to support something like that. But we have a bunch of metal in our storage, so we're going to take advantage of the fact that we're buffered up like that, and look at that. So that's not a permanent solution, but it's taking us in the right direction. Now we're going to build conveyor belts here. So this is just going to pull from both of these lines. And now we have a place where these can both build up. And now for the pièce de résistance, which is... let's have them in side-by-side storages here. So now we have those being directly fed into a storage using a sorter. And we're going to do the same thing here. And those are just slowly going to build up now. They're just going to be built up automatically. And as a matter of fact, just to keep these two new assemblers that I've just built from sucking the resources dry that obviously some of my other buildings need, I'm going to set a limit on how many of these I can store to start out. So we're going to say 5 stacks of each. We'll eventually expand this, but that way, when the 5 stacks are full, these assemblers will stop pulling those resources, if that makes sense. Otherwise, the storages would have to fill all the way up to the 30 slot limit. Looks like we need some additional graphite here, so let's go ahead and pull that, and we will finish this core upgrade. What's this one going to need? Oh, this next... oh, nice. That's a construction drone flight speed upgrade. So right now, the particular upgrade that we're working on is 200 more kilowatts of mecha fuel power. So essentially, we'll have more capacity in our battery. I believe that's what that is. There's 2 different upgrades you can apply to the battery. Let's take a look real quick. That's the distinction between the two. So there's the energy circuit, 200 kilowatts of mecha fuel power. And then there's the mecha core, which is 40 megajoules of max core energy. So it's the max core energy that actually improves the cap. Whereas the energy circuit, this increases the recovery speed of mecha core energy. Okay, got it. The higher the fuel chamber's power, the faster the mecha converts fuel into energy. So this will, when you've seen the arrows moving along at the bottom of the screen with regard to like my charge going up or down, it will be going up faster from now on as a result of having gotten that stuff set up. All right, so I don't have anywhere for this steel to go yet. I could technically... there is actually a solution. Hang on. This is going to be beautiful. You know how I've been building conveyor belts so far, like in groups? Check this out. I just grabbed 200 out of the box. I just grabbed them. The base has built them for me. Is that satisfying or what? Like, now I just have to use them. So already we're starting to see an improvement in efficiency. All right, I'm going to put the steel... yeah, I left this storage blank earlier, and I think that's kind of perfect, because now what we can do is have our steel output to this storage. Now, this is also going to be interesting, because what we're going to see is these are going to run continuously as this steel storage fills up. So until that fills up, these are going to run continuously and suck some of that metal off the line. So what we pretty much have to do now is, before we wrap up this episode, I'm going to... I'll tell you what, let me show you something really neat. We'll end on a high note. Again, this is an exceptionally engineered and very easy to approach game. And the reason is you have the ability to do all kinds of crazy stuff that reduces the number of clicks that you would normally have to do in a game like this in order to keep up with all the details. So watch this. Rather than me going into the production menu and building a new smelter and then applying both sorters and then picking the recipe so that I'm doubling the amount of production of iron ingots. Watch this. I'm just going to shift click this, and I'm done. It just copied not only the sorter placement, but the recipe. And now I have doubled my production of iron ingots, just to help ensure that this issue here that I was mentioning earlier, as far as our iron ingots running dry because of the amount of pull that's happening on this line, now that the production line is kind of going and using up these resources. Now that risk has been dramatically reduced. So in the next episode, we are going to be focused on picking some additional technologies to work on. And again, pretty soon, I mean, I would say that we probably have to refine oil and get a few more things going But within another few episodes, we are going to be very seriously moving toward leaving the planet for the first time and visiting some of our neighbor planets, Alpha Andromedae 3 and 4, specifically, to see what kind of resources we can get from those. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along. New episodes are coming out every day at noon, U.S. Eastern Time. Comments are always welcome. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.